You really expect me to believe a kid like you bought this Lamborghini honestly? Everything you need is in my paperwork, officer, if you just read it. That paperwork means nothing when the story sounds this expensive and your face looks guilty.
He snatched the registration, glanced once, and let the crowd see his smile.
I'm telling you, the title, insurance, and payment records all match my name.
The officer shoved him against the hood as phones rose around the pumps.
Turn around slowly before I add resisting to whatever mess you already made.
He stayed silent, hands visible, eyes steady. The officer had no idea he was handcuffing the youngest self-made millionaire in the state. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The bright green Lamborghini purred to a stop at pump number 4. Cairo Vance turned off the engine and stepped out into the warm afternoon sun. He wore a simple denim jacket over a black shirt and dark jeans. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy except the car itself. The gas station buzzed with normal afternoon traffic. Families filled their tanks. Construction workers grabbed cold drinks. Kids pressed their faces against car windows while parents pumped gas. Then the whispers started. Look at that car. Is that real? No way that kid owns that. Cairo pulled out his credit card and slid it into the pump. He had done this 1,000 times, but today felt different. Today, eyes followed his every move. A teenage girl pointed her phone at him. The camera lens caught the sunlight as she filmed. Her friend giggled and whispered something Cairo could not hear. An older man in work boots shook his head and muttered to his wife. Probably Daddy's money, someone said behind him. Cairo kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing anger only made things worse. He squeezed the gas handle and watched the numbers climb on the pump display. More phones appeared, more stares. The crowd grew thicker around him. A woman in a business suit walked closer. "Excuse me, but is that your car?" "Yes, ma'am," Cairo replied politely. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "It's just so expensive. You look so young." Before Cairo could answer, a police cruiser pulled into the lot. The black and white car moved slowly past the pumps. Blue and red lights sat dark on the roof, but Cairo felt their weight anyway. The patrol car stopped near the air pump. 2 officers got out. Officer Wade Merrick walked with heavy steps, his chest pushed out like he owned the whole gas station. His partner, Sergeant Nolan Briggs, moved quieter, but watched everything with sharp eyes. Merrick headed straight for Cairo. His hand rested on his belt, fingers drumming near his radio. "Hey!" Merrick called out. His voice cut through the crowd noise. "You!" Cairo set the gas pump back in its holder. The tank was full. He turned to face the officer with his hands visible. "Yes, officer? How'd you get this car?" Merrick's tone made it sound like an accusation, not a question. The crowd pressed closer. Phones recorded everything. Cairo felt the weight of dozens of eyes on his back. "I bought it, sir." Cairo reached slowly into his jacket. "I have all the paperwork." He pulled out his wallet with careful movement. No sudden motions, no quick gestures. He had been taught this lesson early. Cairo handed over his driver's license, insurance card, and registration. His fingers stayed steady even though his heart beat faster. Merrick took the documents but barely looked at them. He held them like they were trash. "Registration looks fake to me," Merrick said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Officer, that registration is real. The car is legally mine." Briggs walked around the Lamborghini. He wrote down the license plate number and spoke into his radio. His voice was too quiet for Cairo to catch the words. The crowd whispered louder now. Some people laughed. Others shook their heads like they had expected this all along. "Where do you work?" Merrick demanded. "I own a tech company, sir." Merrick snorted. "Sure you do, kid." Cairo kept his hands at his sides. He knew better than to argue with a badge, but the officer's disbelief stung like salt in an open wound. "The insurance is current," Cairo said calmly. "The registration shows clear title. Everything is legal." Briggs finished his radio call and walked back to Merrick. He leaned close and whispered something that made Merrick's eyes narrow. "Step away from the vehicle," Merrick ordered. Cairo took 3 steps back. His denim jacket hung loose on his shoulders. He looked younger than his 18 years, smaller than the officers, less threatening than anyone in the crowd. But that did not matter to Merrick. The officer stepped closer, his face twisted with suspicion, and something darker. He reached out and grabbed Cairo's arm with rough fingers. "Nice stolen Lambo," Merrick said loudly enough for the whole gas station to hear. Merrick's grip tightened around Cairo's arm like a steel trap. His thick fingers pressed into the young man's jacket, hard enough to leave marks. The crowd formed a loose circle around them, phones held high to capture every second. "That vehicle is mine, officer," Cairo said, his voice steady despite the pain shooting up his arm. "Check the registration before you touch me again." Merrick's laugh was harsh and ugly. "This registration?" He waved the paper in the air like it was a joke. "Kid, I've seen better fake documents from teenagers trying to buy beer." "It's not fake." Cairo's words came out calm and clear. "Run the VIN through your system. Check the title history. Everything will match. Don't tell me how to do my job, boy." The word hung in the air like poison. Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. A mother pulled her child closer to her side. Briggs walked up with his radio still crackling. His face looked serious as he spoke quietly to Merrick. "Vehicle came back flagged. System shows it as stolen property." Cairo's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Show me the report." "I don't have to show you anything," Briggs replied coldly. "Officer, I have the right to see any report that concerns my property." Merrick's free hand moved to his belt. "Your property? This ain't your property, kid. Stolen cars don't belong to car thieves." The crowd pressed closer. More phones appeared. Social media notifications buzzed as videos started uploading in real time. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could read them. "Look at this punk getting busted. Daddy's money can't save him now. Probably rented it for Instagram." Cairo heard every cruel word, but he kept his focus on the officers. "I want to speak to a supervisor. This is harassment." Merrick's face twisted with anger. "Harassment?" He shoved Cairo backward against the Lamborghini's hood. The impact was hard enough to dent the metal and make the crowd gasp. Cairo's back hit the warm surface of his car. Pain shot through his spine, but he did not raise his hands. He did not push back. He had been taught better than that. "The car is legally mine," he repeated through gritted teeth. "I have insurance, registration, and a clear title." "Young men like you always act so important once they get caught," Merrick sneered. "All that fake confidence disappears real quick in handcuffs." Near the station office, Walter Ames stood quietly by the ice machine. The elderly man held his phone low and steady, recording everything with shaking hands. His weathered face showed worry as he watched the scene unfold. Briggs stepped closer to Merrick and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. But Walter was close enough to hear the sergeant's words. "Make the stop clean, Wade." Merrick nodded and pulled silver handcuffs from his belt. The metal clinked as he opened them with practiced movements. "Turn around," Merrick ordered. "Officer, please check the paperwork properly first." "I said turn around." Cairo slowly faced his Lamborghini. The bright green paint reflected his face back at him. For a moment, he looked like any other young man who had worked hard for something beautiful. Then Merrick grabbed his wrists. The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound that seemed to echo across the entire gas station. They were too tight. The metal bit into Cairo's skin and cut off circulation to his fingers. The crowd erupted in noise. Some people cheered. Others looked uncomfortable. A few turned away entirely. "This is wrong," an older woman called out from near Pump 3. "Mind your business, lady," Merrick snapped back. Cairo stood beside his car with his hands locked behind his back. The Lamborghini that had taken him 3 years to earn now felt like evidence of some crime he had not committed. Briggs walked back to the patrol car and returned with yellow police tape. He began wrapping it around the Lamborghini's mirrors and door handles. "Vehicle is being impounded pending investigation," Briggs announced to no one in particular. Walter Ames kept his phone steady and his mouth shut, but his old eyes missed nothing as the scene played out in front of him. The tape fluttered in the afternoon breeze like crime scene ribbons around Cairo's dream. Cairo sat on the metal bench in the holding room. The air conditioning blasted cold air through rusty vents above his head. His wrists throbbed where the handcuffs had cut into his skin. Red marks circled both hands like bracelets of shame. Through the thick glass window, he could see Officer Merrick at a computer terminal. The man typed slowly with 2 fingers, pausing every few seconds to think. His face showed concentration as he crafted whatever lies would justify the arrest. Cairo's denim jacket hung on a hook by the door. His wallet, keys, and phone sat in a clear plastic bag on a nearby desk. Everything that proved who he was had been taken away and sealed up like evidence. The heavy door buzzed and clicked open. A woman in a sharp gray suit walked in with purpose. She carried a leather briefcase in one hand and a thick folder in the other. "Cairo Vance?" She extended her hand with confidence. "I'm Elena Cross. Your emergency contact brought me here." Cairo shook her hand carefully. "My grandmother called you." "She did, and she was right to worry." Elena opened her briefcase on the small table. "I brought everything we need to end this nonsense immediately." She pulled out documents one by one and spread them across the surface. Registration papers, insurance cards, bank records, corporate filings. Each page was organized with colored tabs and official seals. "Vehicle registration shows clear title in your name," Elena said. "Insurance policy shows full coverage with you as the primary driver. And this corporate verification proves you are the founder and majority owner of Vancelock Technologies." Cairo watched through the glass as Merrick looked up from his computer. The officer squinted at Elena and made a phone call. "Vancelock?" Cairo asked quietly. "How did you know about my company?" "Your grandmother is very proud," Elena replied with a small smile. "She told me her 18-year-old grandson built a tech business worth millions. Vehicle authentication software, correct?" "That's right. We help prevent car theft and title fraud." Elena's eyes hardened. "Then someone has a twisted sense of humor." The door opened again. Sergeant Briggs walked in with Merrick close behind. Both men looked serious, but not apologetic. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Briggs. We need to verify these documents before—" "Verify them?" Elena's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Officer, this young man owns that Lamborghini outright. He paid cash. The paperwork is perfect." Merrick crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "Lady, kids his age don't own cars like that without some kind of criminal activity." "Kids his age?" Elena pulled out another document. "This kid is scheduled to meet with state pension fund investors this evening. They want to purchase his fraud prevention software for government vehicle fleets." Merrick's confident expression faltered. "State investors? $5 million contract," Elena continued. "The meeting was supposed to start 2 hours ago." Briggs stepped forward and studied the papers more carefully. His face grew pale as he read through the corporate documents and saw official state letterhead on the investor correspondence. "This cannot be real," Merrick said, but his voice had lost its earlier certainty. "It's real," Elena replied. "And now we need to discuss why a respected young businessman was handcuffed beside his own car based on what appears to be false information." Briggs looked at Merrick with cold eyes. The sergeant's jaw tightened as he realized the magnitude of their mistake. "Release him," Briggs ordered quietly. "But the stolen vehicle report—" "Release him now." Merrick unlocked Cairo's handcuffs without making eye contact. The metal came away from his wrists with relief. Cairo rubbed the sore spots and flexed his fingers to restore circulation. "We apologize for any inconvenience," Briggs said in a flat, official tone. Elena gathered the documents back into neat stacks. "Inconvenience? You arrested an innocent man in public and impounded his legally owned vehicle. The car will be released immediately," Briggs replied. As Elena organized the paperwork, Cairo noticed something strange. One document caught his attention, a copy of the stolen vehicle alert that had triggered his arrest. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. Cairo checked his watch. He had been arrested at 3:27 p.m. "Elena," he said quietly, "look at this." She studied the alert timestamp and compared it to the arrest report. Her experienced eyes widened with recognition. "The stolen vehicle report was created only 40 minutes before your arrest," she said in a whisper. Cairo felt ice form in his stomach. "What does that mean?" Elena looked directly into his eyes. Her voice was steady but chilling. It means someone didn't mistake you for a thief, Cairo. Someone targeted you. The glass doors of the police station slid open as Cairo and Elena stepped into the cool evening air. The sun had disappeared behind the horizon, leaving streaks of orange and purple across the darkening sky. Cairo pulled his phone from his jacket pocket and immediately felt his heart sink. 47 missed calls, hundreds of text messages, social media notifications filling his entire screen with angry red dots. "What is it?" Elena asked, noticing his expression. Cairo scrolled through the flood of notifications. His hands began to shake as he read message after message of hate and mockery. People he had never met were calling him a fraud, a criminal, a wannabe rich kid who finally got caught. "They filmed it," he whispered. "The whole arrest. It's everywhere." Elena moved closer to look at his screen. A local news video had already been shared thousands of times. The headline made Cairo's stomach turn. "Young man arrested in luxury car theft investigation." The footage showed him in handcuffs beside the bright green Lamborghini. His calm voice asking for the registration to be checked was drowned out by the reporter's voiceover, describing him as a suspect in an ongoing luxury vehicle theft ring. "This is character assassination," Elena said, her voice sharp with anger. Cairo's phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Rivera, his lead investor, and the man who was supposed to meet him 3 hours ago. "Marcus, I can explain—" "Explain what, Cairo?" Marcus's voice was cold and distant. "Explain why my business partner was arrested for car theft? Explain why every news station is showing you in handcuffs? The charges were dropped. The car is mine. The police made a mistake. Mistake or not, we cannot move forward with someone under this kind of scrutiny. The pension fund board has strict morality clauses. We are postponing indefinitely." The line went dead. Cairo stared at the phone in disbelief. 5 years of work. Millions of dollars in contracts. Gone because of 40 minutes of false accusations. Another call came immediately. This time, it was Jennifer Walsh, chairwoman of his company's board of directors. "Cairo, we need an emergency board meeting first thing tomorrow morning. The investors are panicking and we need to discuss damage control immediately." "Jennifer, listen to me. This was a setup. Someone created a false stolen vehicle report. We will discuss everything tomorrow. Until then, I suggest you find a very good crisis management firm." As Cairo hung up, his mind began working through the timeline. Only 3 people had known his exact route to the investor meeting today: his assistant Sarah, his grandmother Ruth, and Victor Harlan. Victor Harlan, owner of Harlan Premier Motors, and the man who had tried to purchase Vancelock Technologies 6 months earlier. Cairo had rejected the offer after his software detected suspicious title transfers linked to Harlan's dealership network, vehicle identification numbers that did not match, auction records with gaps, insurance claims that seemed manufactured. Harlan had not taken the rejection well. He had called Cairo naive, told him he was making powerful enemies, said that young entrepreneurs needed experienced partners to survive in the real business world. "You look like you are putting pieces together," Elena observed. "There was a dealership owner who wanted to buy my company, Victor Harlan. When I refused, he made some threats about my reputation." "What kind of threats?" Cairo's phone buzzed with another call. This time it was Ruth, his grandmother. Her name on the screen made him answer immediately. "Grandma?" "Cairo, baby. I just saw the news." Ruth's voice was thick with tears. "They arrested you just like they arrested your father. Oh, God, it is happening all over again." Cairo felt his chest tighten. His father had died when Cairo was 12, but not from illness or accident. Jerome Vance had died from a broken heart after police seized his repair shop's vehicles during a false investigation. The family had lost everything: the business, their savings, their reputation. Jerome never recovered from watching people treat him like a criminal. "Grandma, this is different. I have lawyers. I have proof." "Your father had proof, too," Ruth whispered. "But they did not care about proof. They cared about making an example." The pieces clicked together in Cairo's mind with horrible clarity. The timing was not coincidental. Someone had known about his investor meeting. Someone had wanted him arrested publicly, right before the biggest deal of his life closed. Someone had wanted to trigger the morality clauses and destroy his reputation. Victor Harlan had the connections. Victor Harlan had the motive. And Victor Harlan had the resources to create false police reports. Cairo ended the call with his grandmother and looked directly at Elena. His voice was steady, but filled with quiet determination. "I know who did this," he said, "and I am going to prove it." Elena nodded. "Then we better get started, because whoever set this up is not going to stop here." Cairo stared back at the police station where Officers Merrick and Briggs were probably finishing their paperwork, completely unaware they had been used as weapons in someone else's war. "I will prove who created that false alert," Cairo said quietly, "and when I do, everyone involved will face the consequences." The morning sun cast long shadows across the city impound yard as Cairo and Elena walked through the chain-link gates. The smell of motor oil and rusted metal hung heavy in the air. Rows of seized vehicles stretched across the cracked asphalt lot like a graveyard of dreams. Cairo spotted his bright green Lamborghini immediately. It sat beneath a flickering fluorescent light, surrounded by dented sedans and abandoned pickup trucks. Even here, among the forgotten cars, it looked impossibly out of place. "There it is," Elena said, adjusting her briefcase strap. "Let's get the digital logs and get out of here." But as they approached the impound office, two familiar figures stepped out of a patrol car. Officer Wade Merrick and Sergeant Nolan Briggs walked toward them with the confident swagger of men who owned the ground they walked on. "Well, look who came crawling back," Merrick said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "The famous car thief himself." Cairo kept his expression neutral. "Officer Merrick, Sergeant Briggs, I'm here to retrieve my legally owned vehicle." Briggs held up a thick manila folder. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. This vehicle remains evidence in an ongoing investigation." Elena stepped forward. "What investigation? The charges were dropped yesterday." "New charges," Briggs said smoothly. "After reviewing Officer Merrick's report more carefully, we've identified several concerning behaviors that warrant further examination." He opened the folder and began reading in an official monotone. Subject appeared agitated and combative during lawful detention. Subject refused to provide clear explanation for vehicle ownership. Subject displayed suspicious knowledge of police procedure, inconsistent with innocent civilian behavior. Cairo felt his jaw tighten. Every word was a lie. But instead of arguing, he pulled out his phone and began taking pictures. The folder, the badge numbers, the time stamp on his screen, the license plates of both patrol cars. "What are you doing?" Merrick demanded. "Documenting," Cairo said calmly, taking pictures of public officials performing their duties in a public space. Perfectly legal. Briggs closed the folder quickly, but not before Cairo captured an image of his signature at the bottom of the false report. "You need to stop that right now." "Actually, he doesn't," Elena said. "First Amendment protections are quite clear on this matter." An older man in coveralls emerged from the impound office. His name tag read Frank Martinez, clerk. He looked nervous, glancing between the officers and Cairo like he wanted to disappear. "Frank, process the evidence, hold paperwork," Briggs ordered. Frank hesitated. "Actually, there's something you should know about cars held here too long. Sometimes the system gets confused. Vehicles get transferred to auction before owners can retrieve them. Happens more than it should." The warning was subtle but clear. Frank was trying to help without openly defying the officers. Cairo photographed the impound yard's posted rules and regulations. Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. On the towing receipt taped to his windshield was a company name, Metro Recovery Services. He had seen that name before, in his grandmother's box of old documents, the same company that had towed vehicles from his father's repair shop 15 years ago. "Elena," he said quietly, pointing to the receipt, "look at the towing company." She read the name and her expression hardened. "Metro Recovery Services. I've heard of them. They work closely with certain dealerships on vehicle transfers." Merrick was growing impatient. "Are you two done playing detective? The car stays here until we say otherwise." Cairo took one final photograph, the entire scene with his Lamborghini, the officers, and the Metro recovery receipt all in frame. The digital timestamp would prove when and where this conversation occurred. "We'll be back with a court order," Elena announced. "You do that," Briggs replied, "but I wouldn't get my hopes up. Evidence has a way of becoming unavailable when cases get complicated." As they walked back toward the gate, Frank Martinez appeared beside them, pretending to inspect a nearby vehicle. "Kid," he said quietly, not looking directly at Cairo, "your car won't last the week if you don't move fast. The transfer paperwork is already being processed." Cairo nodded his thanks. As they reached Elena's car, he pulled out his phone and called his grandmother. "Ruth, I need you to find those old papers from Dad's case, especially anything with Metro Recovery Services on it." "Why, baby? What's happening?" "The same people who took Dad's shop are trying to take my car. But this time, I'm going to stop them." The front door of Ruth Vance's small home opened before Cairo could knock. His grandmother stood there in her faded blue house dress, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. The worry lines around her eyes had deepened since yesterday. "Come in, baby," she said softly, pulling him into a warm embrace. "I've got everything ready." The kitchen smelled like coffee and old paper. On the small wooden table sat a cardboard storage box, its corners soft with age. Ruth had already removed the dusty lid, revealing stacks of yellowed documents arranged in careful piles. Cairo sat down in the same chair he'd used for homework 20 years ago. Elena took the seat across from him, her expression respectful but alert. Ruth poured 3 cups of coffee from an old percolator and settled beside her grandson. "I haven't looked through these papers in 5 years, Ruth said, her voice heavy. "After your daddy passed, it hurt too much. But last night, I stayed up reading every single page." She reached into the box and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Start with these, the seizure notices." Cairo opened the envelope carefully. The first document was stamped with the city seal and dated 15 years ago. "Notice of vehicle impoundment, Vance Auto Repair." Below that, a list of 12 cars and trucks taken from his father's lot. "They said the vehicles were stolen," Ruth explained. "Said your daddy was running some kind of chop shop, but every single car on that list had proper paperwork. Customers had dropped them off for brake jobs, transmission work, simple repairs." Elena leaned forward. "What was the basis for the seizure?" Ruth pulled out another document. "Anonymous tip. Someone called and said stolen vehicles were being dismantled at the shop. Police arrived with a warrant and towed everything. Your daddy showed them the work orders, the customer contracts, the repair receipts. They didn't care." Cairo studied the seizure warrant. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, was a signature. "N. Briggs, Officer number 247. His hands tightened on the paper. "Nolan Briggs. "The same man who supervised your arrest," Ruth said quietly. The next document made Cairo's stomach twist. It was a handwritten letter from his father to the police chief, dated 2 weeks after the seizure. The writing was desperate, pleading. "Chief Morrison, I am begging you to look at the evidence again. These were legitimate customer vehicles. I have 30 years of clean business records. My reputation is everything I have built. Please do not let one false report destroy my family's name." Ruth's voice cracked. "He wrote 17 letters. To the police, the mayor, the city attorney, the newspaper. Nobody would listen. They said if he was innocent, the courts would sort it out." Cairo found the court documents. His father had tried to fight the seizure legally, but the legal bills mounted faster than he could pay them. The attorney had withdrawn from the case after 6 months of unpaid invoices. "We lost the shop first," Ruth continued. "Couldn't make the mortgage without the income from customer repairs. Then the house. Your mama got sick from the stress, and the medical bills finished what was left." Elena was taking notes. "What happened to the seized vehicles?" Ruth handed over a thin stack of auction notices. "Sold at police auction 6 months later. Daddy was still fighting in court when they auctioned his tools, his equipment, and every car on the lot." Cairo photographed each document with his phone, uploading them immediately to his secure cloud storage. He wouldn't let these disappear like the gas station footage. The auction records showed 12 vehicles sold to various buyers. Most went for far below their actual value, but one entry caught Cairo's attention. 1995 Mercedes S-Class, VIN ending 4472, sold to HPM Enterprises for $3,200. He looked up at his grandmother. HPM Enterprises? Ruth nodded grimly. I researched that company years later. It's a shell company. Guess who owned it? Elena was already connecting the dots. Harlan Premier Motors. Cairo stared at the document. Victor Harlan had bought his father's customer's car at a rigged police auction 15 years ago. The same Victor Harlan who had tried to destroy his company yesterday. His phone rang. Elena answered. After a brief conversation, she hung up and looked at him with concern. That was Frank Martinez from the impound yard. Your Lamborghini just got transferred to Metro Recovery Services. They're moving it to auction tomorrow morning. That same afternoon, Elena drove Cairo through the quiet streets toward the Central Library. Neither spoke much during the 20-minute ride. Cairo sat with his laptop bag and a folder of copied documents from Ruth's box, his jaw tight with controlled anger. Marla Bennett worked DMV fraud investigation for 32 years, Elena said, as they pulled into the library parking lot. She tried to blow the whistle on title laundering schemes multiple times. Management buried her reports and forced her into early retirement. They walked through the library's main entrance, past families reading picture books and students hunched over textbooks. Elena led him to a small meeting room in the back corner, where a woman in her 60s sat at a round table surrounded by manila folders and a thick binder. Marla Bennett had steel-gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and sharp brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a simple blue sweater and looked like someone's retired school principal, except for the intensity in her expression when she studied documents. "You must be Cairo," she said, standing to shake his hand. Her grip was firm. "Elena showed me the arrest footage. That was a setup from the first minute." Cairo sat across from her and pulled out his phone. "I have the stolen vehicle alert they used to justify the arrest." Marla took the phone and studied the screen carefully. Her face darkened as she read. "This is a Code 47 alert. That's restricted access." "What does that mean?" Cairo asked. "Regular patrol officers can run VIN checks and see if a car is reported stolen," Marla explained, "but they cannot create new theft alerts in the system. Code 47 requires either detective-level access or licensed dealership partnership credentials." Elena leaned forward. "So either a detective flagged the car or someone at a dealership did it." "Exactly. And look at this timestamp." Marla pointed to the screen. "This alert was generated at 11:23 a.m. What time did the officers approach you?" Cairo checked his phone records. "I called my insurance company at 11:51, so the arrest happened maybe 10 minutes before that." Marla's expression grew grimmer. "Someone created a false stolen vehicle report 18 minutes before you were arrested. This was not a mistake or a computer glitch. This was deliberate." She opened her thick binder and showed them pages of vehicle records, auction listings, and dealership transfers. "This is how the racket works. High-value cars get flagged as stolen through fake reports. Police seize them during traffic stops or searches. The cars sit in impound for months while paperwork gets shuffled around. Meanwhile, someone files quiet title change requests using shell companies." Cairo studied the complex web of transfers Marla had mapped out. "Then what happens?" "Police auction," Marla said. "But the auctions are rigged. The same shell companies bid low amounts and win the cars. Then they transfer ownership to connected dealerships, who resell them at full market value to unsuspecting buyers." Elena was taking notes rapidly. "The stolen vehicle reports disappear from the system? They get marked as resolved through recovery or owner restitution," Marla confirmed. "Makes everything look clean on paper." Cairo opened his laptop and launched his Vancelock software. The screen filled with vehicle identification tools, database search functions, and data analysis modules. "I can cross-reference VIN histories with insurance claims, impound records, and dealership sales," he said. "If this is really a pattern, the data will show it." He started with his own Lamborghini, entering the VIN and pulling up its complete history. The car showed clean ownership until yesterday, when the false stolen report appeared. "Now, let me check similar vehicles," Cairo muttered, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. He searched for other high-end cars that had been flagged as stolen in the past year, then recovered through police action. The results appeared in a spreadsheet format, showing dates, locations, and final dispositions. "Here," he said, pointing at the screen. 15 luxury vehicles reported stolen, recovered by police, and sold at auction in the past 18 months. Marla studied the data. "Look at the auction buyers." The pattern was clear. 7 different company names had purchased the vehicles, but when Cairo ran the business registrations, they all traced back to the same business address. HPM Enterprises, Harlan Premium Holdings, Metro Auto Solutions, Cairo read, all registered to 1247 Commerce Drive. Elena pulled out her phone and searched the address. "That's Victor Harlan's main dealership location." Cairo's search expanded. He pulled insurance claim data for vehicles reported stolen but never recovered. He cross-referenced impound lot records. He tracked VIN histories through state registration databases. The software worked methodically, turning scattered data points into clear patterns. Cairo felt his emotional rage cooling into something more dangerous, precise, documented anger. "Marla," he said quietly, "how long has this been going on?" She opened another folder. "I tried to investigate similar patterns 12 years ago, found evidence of systematic title fraud, phantom stolen vehicle reports, and auction manipulation. I wrote a 40-page report with documented proof." "What happened to the report?" Marla's face hardened. "My supervisor said I was seeing patterns that didn't exist. Said I was becoming paranoid and needed to focus on simple DMV violations instead of conspiracy theories. 6 months later, they offered me early retirement. But you kept investigating on your own," Elena guessed. "I kept watching. Every few years, I'd notice another cluster of suspicious vehicle transfers. Same methods, same shell companies, same auction patterns. But I learned to be more careful about who I trusted." Cairo's software chimed with new results. 5 vehicles flagged as particularly suspicious based on ownership transfer patterns, auction pricing, and geographic clustering. These cars all got flagged as stolen, seized by police, sold at auction to shell companies, then resold through Harlan's dealership network, he said. Marla leaned over to look at the screen. Her face went white. "Cairo," she said slowly, "that 1995 Mercedes at the bottom of the list." He looked at the VIN ending in 4472, the same car from Ruth's auction documents. "That belonged to a customer at my father's shop," Cairo said. "Mrs. Patterson brought it in for brake work the day before the seizure." The software showed the car's complete journey. Seized from Vance Auto Repair, sold at police auction to HPM Enterprises, retitled through shell transfers, then resold through Harlan Premier Motors for $28,000 3 months later. Marla's warning came quietly but urgently. "Cairo, men like Briggs do not just cover their tracks. When evidence threatens them, they destroy witnesses." Cairo's phone buzzed at 7:43 p.m., unknown number. He almost ignored it. "Hello? Mr. Vance?" The voice was elderly, nervous. "This is Walter Ames. I work at the gas station where they arrested you." Cairo sat up straight. "Mr. Ames, what can I do for you?" "I need to talk to you. In person. Not over the phone." Walter's voice dropped to a whisper. "I have something you need to see. Something about what really happened." "Where?" "You know the old Murphy's Diner on Elm Street? The one that's been closed for 2 years? Meet me behind it in an hour. Come alone, but maybe bring that lawyer lady if you trust her." The line went dead. Cairo immediately called Elena and Marla. They agreed to meet him at the diner, each taking different routes to avoid being followed. The abandoned diner sat in darkness, its broken neon sign casting fractured shadows across the empty parking lot. Cairo parked his rental car behind the building, where a single streetlight flickered weakly. Walter emerged from the shadows like a ghost. The old man looked around nervously before approaching. "Mr. Ames," Cairo said, "thank you for calling." "Don't thank me yet," Walter's hands shook as he pulled a small device from his jacket pocket. This is a backup security drive from the gas station. Elena and Marla arrived within minutes of each other. Walter studied them carefully before continuing. The owner told everyone the cameras malfunctioned that day. Walter said, "That's a lie. I've been running those security systems for 8 years. Nothing malfunctioned." He held up the drive. "I made a backup copy before they wiped the main system. This has everything from that morning." Elena stepped forward. "You saved the footage of the arrest?" "Not just the arrest, the whole thing. From when Mr. Vance pulled up until after they drove him away." Walter's voice grew stronger. "I watched those officers ignore his paperwork. I watched them refuse to check his documents properly." Cairo felt hope rising in his chest for the first time in days. "Can we see it?" Walter nodded toward an old laptop bag at his feet. "Brought my personal computer. Figured you'd want to watch it right away." He set up the laptop on the diner's back steps, connecting the security drive. The screen illuminated with black and white footage from multiple camera angles. "Here," Walter said, clicking play. "This is when you first got out of your car." The footage was clear and damning. Cairo watched himself calmly offering his registration, insurance, and license to Officer Merrick. The timestamp showed Merrick glancing at the documents for less than 3 seconds before handing them back. "He didn't read them," Elena said. "He barely looked." "Keep watching," Walter said. The next angle showed Sergeant Briggs approaching Merrick from behind. Briggs leaned close to Merrick's ear, whispering something. Immediately after, Merrick's demeanor became more aggressive. "What did Briggs tell him?" Marla asked. "I can't hear the words," Walter admitted, "but watch what happens next." The footage showed Merrick grabbing Cairo's arm, while Cairo remained calm and cooperative. Every movement contradicted the police report, claiming Cairo had been combative and resistant. "This proves the report is false," Elena said. "Completely false." She was already pulling out her phone. "I need to file an emergency motion tonight. This footage shows deliberate misconduct and perjury." Marla took the drive from Walter's laptop. "We need multiple copies. If something happens to one—" "I've got secure cloud storage," Cairo said. "Military-grade encryption through my company's servers." They worked quickly in the flickering streetlight. Marla copied the footage to 3 different drives. Cairo uploaded an encrypted version to Vancelock's most secure server, protected by multiple authentication layers. Elena drafted the emergency filing on her phone, attaching still frames from the video that clearly showed Cairo offering documents and Merrick refusing to examine them properly. "This changes everything," she said. "We can prove the officers lied in their reports. We can show Cairo was cooperative and that they had no legitimate basis for arrest." Walter packed up his laptop with shaking hands. "I hope this helps. Your father was a good man, Mr. Vance. He helped me fix my car once. Didn't charge me full price because he knew I was struggling." "He was," Cairo said quietly. "Thank you for doing the right thing." "Just promise me something," Walter said. "When this goes public, when people see what really happened, remember that there are good people who work at that gas station too. Don't let us all get painted with the same brush." "I promise." Walter disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Cairo, Elena, and Marla standing beside the abandoned diner. For the first time since his arrest, Cairo felt the weight of injustice beginning to lift. The public narrative could be reversed. The truth had teeth now. 2 hours later, Walter Ames was awakened by heavy knocking on his apartment door. Through his peephole, he saw 3 police officers with handcuffs ready. "Walter Ames, you're under arrest for tampering with evidence." Cairo stared at the television screen in Elena's office, watching his world collapse in real time. Sergeant Nolan Briggs stood confidently behind a podium outside police headquarters, his uniform crisp and his expression grave. "After a thorough investigation, we have discovered evidence suggesting Mr. Cairo Vance may be involved in a sophisticated fraud scheme," Briggs announced to the gathered reporters. "We are now examining falsified vehicle records, questionable financial transactions, and possible obstruction of justice." The cameras flashed as Briggs continued his performance. "This young man has portrayed himself as a victim, but our investigation reveals a pattern of deception that goes far beyond one incident." Cairo's hands clenched into fists. Every word is a lie. Elena placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. We have the footage. The truth will come out. Will it? Cairo asked bitterly. Look at this circus. Victor Harlan stepped up to the microphone next, wearing an expensive navy suit and a concerned expression that made Cairo's stomach turn. The dealership owner looked like the perfect businessman, respectable, trustworthy, and deeply worried about justice. I want to speak for the real victims here, Harlan said smoothly. Legitimate car owners who've had their vehicles stolen, young entrepreneurs who work honestly to build their businesses. This fraud investigation shows that wealth obtained through deception hurts everyone in our community. The reporters ate it up. Questions flew about Cairo's alleged criminal network and fraudulent documentation. Not one person asked about the gas station footage or the timing of the stolen vehicle alert. Cairo's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Vance Lock's board chairman. Mr. Vance, I'm calling with difficult news, the chairman said without preamble. The board has voted to suspend you from all company operations pending the outcome of this investigation. This is exactly what they wanted, Cairo said. Don't you see that? We have no choice. Our reputation is at stake. The fraud allegations are too serious to ignore. The call ended. Immediately, another call came through from Cairo's primary investor. Cairo, I'm sorry, but we're withdrawing our funding commitment, the investor said. The morality clause in our contract gives us the right to exit based on criminal allegations. I haven't been charged with anything. The investigation is enough. My partners are spooked. We can't be associated with this kind of controversy. Within minutes, Cairo received automated notifications that his business accounts had been frozen pending a financial review triggered by the fraud investigation. Years of work, millions in legitimate earnings, all locked away because Briggs had learned to weaponize paperwork. Elena was already drafting responses, but Cairo could see the frustration in her movements. They're moving fast, she said. Too fast. This is coordinated. The office phone rang. Elena answered and immediately handed it to Cairo. It's your grandmother. Ruth's voice was shaking. Cairo, you need to come home right now. Someone broke into my house. Are you hurt? No, baby, I'm fine. I was at the grocery store, but they tore the place apart. They went through everything. Cairo and Elena raced across town to Ruth's small house. The front door had been forced open, the wood splintered around the lock. Inside, furniture was overturned, and drawers had been emptied across the floor. Ruth stood in the middle of the chaos, her hands trembling but her back straight. They didn't take my jewelry, didn't touch my purse, even left the cash in my kitchen jar. Cairo surveyed the damage. The television, computer, and other valuables sat untouched. But Ruth's bedroom had been thoroughly searched, with papers scattered everywhere. The box, Ruth said quietly, the one with your father's documents. It's gone. Elena knelt beside an overturned filing cabinet. They were looking for specific papers. This wasn't random. Cairo helped his grandmother to her chair, his mind racing. The original court documents, seizure records, and auction receipts that connected Briggs to his father's case had all been in that box. Evidence that could have proven the pattern of corruption stretching back decades. How did they know? Ruth asked. How did they know what I had? The realization hit Cairo like ice water. Briggs and Harlan weren't just trying to destroy his reputation. They were eliminating evidence of their past crimes, and they were willing to terrorize an elderly woman to do it. He stood in his grandmother's damaged living room, surrounded by the wreckage of a deliberate attack, and understood with crystal clarity that these men were close enough to hurt his family. The system wasn't just fighting back. It was coming for everyone he loved. The Vance Lock testing garage sat in darkness when Cairo pulled up at midnight. He had deliberately avoided his main office building, knowing Briggs probably had someone watching it. But this private lab, tucked behind an industrial complex on the other side of town, remained his sanctuary. Elena and Marla were already waiting inside when he unlocked the reinforced door. The space looked more like a high-tech cave than a garage, with computer workstations surrounding a central lift where various vehicles sat in different stages of testing. This better be worth the risk, Elena said, glancing around nervously. "If they catch us here after the break-in at Ruth's house, it's worth it," Cairo interrupted, walking directly to the bright green Lamborghini parked in the center bay. "Everything we need is right here." Marla followed him to the car, her experienced eyes scanning the pristine exterior. "You said you had proof. What kind of proof?" Cairo knelt beside the driver's door and ran his fingers along the edge of the dashboard. With a soft click, a hidden panel slid open, revealing a compact electronic device no larger than a smartphone. "Authentication module," he said, carefully disconnecting the device. "I've been testing it for months. It's designed to detect VIN cloning, title fraud, and unauthorized database access." Elena leaned closer. "You've been running surveillance on your own car?" "Not surveillance. Documentation." Cairo carried the module to his workstation and connected it to his computer. "After I started investigating Harlan Premier Motors, I noticed suspicious scan attempts on high-end vehicles. Someone was copying VIN numbers and creating false alerts to trigger seizures." The computer screen filled with encrypted data logs as Cairo's fingers flew across the keyboard. Marla pulled up a chair beside him, her fraud investigator instincts taking over. "Show me the timeline," she said. "Start with the day they arrested you." Cairo filtered the data to display activity from the morning of his arrest. 3 distinct entries appeared on screen, each time-stamped and logged with system identification codes. "Here," Cairo pointed to the first entry. 8:47 a.m. A dealership terminal accessed my VIN number and triggered a stolen vehicle alert. Look at the terminal ID. Elena read the code aloud. HPM 3301. "What does that mean?" "Harlan Premier Motors, Terminal 3, Marla said grimly. "I recognize their system codes from my DMV days." The second entry appeared 43 minutes later. 9:30 a.m. A police patrol system accessed the same alert and modified the status from unverified report to confirmed stolen. Cairo highlighted the patrol unit identifier. "Unit designation matches Sergeant Briggs's cruiser." "Unbelievable," Elena whispered. "They created the false report and then had Briggs legitimize it in the system." The third entry made Cairo's blood run cold. 9:52 a.m. A handheld scanner accessed my vehicle's VIN directly. 8 minutes before Officer Merrick approached me at the gas station. Marla studied the data with professional intensity. "This proves premeditation. They didn't stumble across a suspicious vehicle. They targeted you specifically." "But why?" Elena asked. "What made them single you out?" Cairo pulled up additional logs from previous weeks. The screen displayed dozens of scan attempts on luxury vehicles, all traced back to the same pattern. Harlan's dealership would identify high-value targets, Briggs would create false alerts, and patrol officers would make seizures that looked completely legitimate. "My car wasn't the first," Cairo said quietly. "Look at this." The data revealed a systematic operation spanning months. Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Tesla, all scanned, flagged, seized, and transferred through shell companies to Harlan's auction network. "This is huge," Marla breathed. "This isn't just your case. This is racketeering." Elena was already reaching for her phone. "We need to get this to the feds immediately. If Briggs figures out what you have, he can't erase it," Cairo said, his fingers working rapidly to encrypt and duplicate the files. "The module stores everything on a tamper-proof blockchain. Even if they destroy the device, the data exists in multiple secure locations." He finished the encryption process and created 3 identical data packets. One went to Elena's secure email account. The second went directly to the FBI's Civil Rights Division. The third was uploaded to a private server that would automatically release the information to major news outlets if anything happened to Cairo. "Insurance policy," he explained as the uploads completed. "Now, they can't silence this." Marla shook her head in amazement. "You turned your car into a witness." "More than that," Cairo said, ejecting the module from his computer. "I turned it into a trap, and they walked right into it." The courthouse hearing room buzzed with tension as Cairo entered through the heavy wooden doors. Every seat was filled. Local reporters crowded the back rows, their cameras ready. Community members who had seen the arrest footage filled the middle section, their faces mixing curiosity with skepticism. Ruth walked beside Cairo, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing her best navy dress. She carried herself with quiet dignity that commanded respect from everyone who saw her. Marla followed close behind, a thick folder of documents clutched against her chest. Walter's daughter, a young woman named Sarah, sat in the front row, her eyes red from crying over her father's arrest. Cairo wore his dark suit with the denim jacket folded over his arm. He moved with calm purpose, nodding politely to familiar faces, but saying nothing. His notebook was already open in his hand, pen ready. At the defendant's table, confidence radiated from the three men who thought they had already won. Sergeant Briggs sat straight-backed in his dress uniform, every medal and ribbon perfectly aligned. Officer Merrick lounged in his chair, occasionally glancing at the crowd with a smirk. Victor Harlan looked every inch the successful businessman in his expensive gray suit, checking his gold watch, as if this hearing was just another minor interruption. "All rise," the bailiff called, the Honorable Judge Patricia Williams presiding. Judge Williams, a stern black woman in her 50s, took her seat and surveyed the packed courtroom. Her reputation for fairness was matched only by her intolerance for games or deception. "Be seated," she said. "This is an emergency hearing regarding the petition filed by Mr. Cairo Vance for release of impounded property and investigation into alleged civil rights violations. Counselor Cross, you may proceed." Elena stood gracefully, her burgundy blazer sharp against the courtroom's wood paneling. "Thank you, Your Honor. Today we will demonstrate that Mr. Vance was the victim of a coordinated fraud scheme designed to destroy his reputation and steal his property." Briggs's lawyer, a heavy-set man named Davidson, interrupted. "Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making inflammatory accusations without foundation." "I'll allow it as an opening statement," Judge Williams ruled, "but Ms. Cross, you'll need to support those claims with evidence." Elena nodded. "I will, Your Honor. First, I'd like to establish the facts as claimed by the arresting officers. Sergeant Briggs, please state your oath." Briggs stood and was sworn in. His voice carried authority as he took the witness stand. "On the morning of the incident, we received a confirmed stolen vehicle alert for a green Lamborghini. The alert existed in our system before any officer made contact with the suspect, and Officer Merrick's report states that Mr. Vance refused to provide valid documentation." "That's correct," Briggs said firmly. The suspect became combative when asked to verify ownership. He provided what appeared to be falsified documents. Merrick was called next. His swagger was even more pronounced on the witness stand. "The kid thought he could talk his way out of it," he said with contempt. "Kept claiming the car was his when we had a clear stolen alert. He wouldn't follow lawful commands." "Did you examine the registration documents he offered?" Elena asked. "I could tell they were fake just by looking," Merrick replied. "You can spot fraudulent paperwork when you've been doing this as long as I have." Harlan took the stand last, his silver hair gleaming under the courtroom lights. "I've never had any business dealings with Mr. Vance," he said smoothly. "My dealership operates with complete integrity. I had no knowledge of his travel route or vehicle information." Each man repeated his story with absolute confidence, their voices never wavering. They believed the missing gas station footage and Ruth's stolen documents had eliminated any threat to their version of events. Cairo wrote furiously in his notebook, recording every exact word, every precise claim. His pen moved steadily across the page as they built their own trap. "Your Honor," Elena said when the testimony concluded, "I now request permission to present evidence of systematic fraud and conspiracy." Judge Williams leaned forward. "Present your foundation, Counselor. I call Marla Bennett to the stand." Marla rose from her seat, her gray pantsuit practical and professional. She carried her folder to the witness stand and was sworn in with steady determination. "Ms. Bennett," Elena began, "please state your qualifications." 28 years as a DMV fraud investigator. I specialized in title fraud, VIN cloning, and illegal vehicle transfers. I was forced into early retirement for reporting corruption that my supervisors refused to investigate. The courtroom stirred. Briggs shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Elena opened her briefcase and withdrew a stack of printed documents. "Ms. Bennett, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A. Can you identify these records? Marla examined the papers carefully, her experienced eyes scanning the technical data. These are vehicle access logs from an authentication module. They show database queries, terminal identifications, and timestamp records for VIN-related activities. What do these specific logs reveal about the morning of Mr. Vance's arrest? Marla's voice carried across the silent courtroom as she placed the printed logs on the evidence table. The stolen vehicle alert attached to Mr. Vance's Lamborghini originated from a dealership-linked terminal at 8:47 a.m. that morning. Briggs shot forward in his chair, his face reddening with anger. Your Honor, this is completely— Sergeant Briggs, you will remain silent unless called upon, Judge Williams said sharply. Continue, Ms. Bennett. Marla's weathered hands steady on the evidence, she pointed to specific codes on the printout. This alert used a restricted classification that only law enforcement and certified dealership partners can access. Regular stolen car reports use different codes. This one was flagged as priority recovery with immediate impound authorization. Elena stepped closer to the witness stand. What does that designation mean? It bypasses normal verification procedures. Officers are instructed to seize first and verify later. It's supposed to be used only for confirmed federal cases or violent felonies involving vehicles. And Mr. Vance's case involved neither? Absolutely not. This was fraud, pure and simple. Harlan's attorney, a thin man in an expensive gray suit, stood abruptly. Objection. This witness is speculating about system procedures outside her expertise. I supervised these systems for nearly 3 decades, Marla replied coldly before the judge could respond. I wrote half the training manuals these officers claim to follow. Judge Williams nodded. Overruled. Continue, Ms. Bennett. Marla lifted another document from her folder. The alert originated from Terminal HM773, which is registered to Harlan Premier Motors. The same terminal accessed Mr. Vance's vehicle registration 36 hours before the arrest. Someone was tracking his movements. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Harlan's face had gone ashen, his polished confidence cracking like ice under pressure. Elena returned to her table and lifted a small digital device. Your Honor, I'd like to play audio and video evidence recovered from the gas station security system. Davidson jumped to his feet. Your Honor, we were told that footage was destroyed. Backup systems exist, Elena replied smoothly. Mr. Walter Ames preserved the evidence before the primary system was tampered with. The courtroom's overhead screen flickered to life. The gas station footage played with crystal clarity, showing Cairo calmly approaching the pump in his green Lamborghini. The timestamp read 9:23 a.m. The crowd watched as Merrick and Briggs arrived, their patrol cars positioning to block Cairo's exit. The audio was clear as Cairo offered his registration papers. That vehicle is mine, officer. Here's my registration and insurance. Merrick's voice carried across the silent courtroom. I don't need to look at fake papers, kid. Officer, please check the documents before— Turn around and put your hands behind your back. But the most damaging moment came when Briggs leaned close to Merrick's ear. The microphone picked up every word. Make it look clean. No questions about the paperwork. Merrick's face drained of color. His hands gripped the defendant's table so hard his knuckles turned white. Harlan whispered urgently to his attorney, who stood immediately. Your Honor, we request an immediate recess to review this new evidence. Motion denied, Judge Williams said firmly. Ms. Cross, call your next witness. Elena's voice rang with quiet triumph. I call Mr. Cairo Vance. Cairo stood and walked to the witness stand with measured steps. He wore the same dark suit from his arrest day, but now he carried himself like the successful businessman he was. His voice was calm and clear as he was sworn in. Mr. Vance, Elena began, please explain to the court what technology was installed in your vehicle. Cairo faced the courtroom directly, speaking to the judge and gallery in language anyone could understand. My company develops vehicle authentication systems. Think of it like a security camera, but for digital activity. The prototype module in my Lamborghini records, every time someone tries to access the car's identification, Through databases, scanners, or remote queries? And what did your module record on the morning of your arrest? Cairo pulled out a tablet and connected it to the courtroom's display system. At 8:47 a.m., someone at Harlan Premier Motors created the stolen vehicle alert. At 8:52 a.m., Sergeant Briggs accessed my vehicle record from his patrol terminal. At 9:15 a.m., Officer Merrick's scanner attempted to override the legitimate registration. The screen showed a detailed timeline, each digital fingerprint marked with timestamps and terminal identifications. The most important detail, Cairo continued, is that after my arrest, Sergeant Briggs accessed the stolen alert file again at 11:33 a.m. and changed the classification from unverified report to confirmed theft. He tried to make his false arrest look justified after the fact. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Briggs sat frozen, sweat beading on his forehead. Judge Williams leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I hereby order the immediate preservation of all police department, impound facility, and dealership records related to this case. No files are to be altered, deleted, or transferred. As if summoned by his words, the courtroom doors opened and 3 federal agents in dark suits entered, their badges clearly visible. The courthouse hallway buzzed with activity as federal agents escorted Briggs, Merrick, and Harlan through different exits. Cairo sat on a wooden bench beside Ruth, watching the chaos unfold with the same measured calm he'd maintained throughout his testimony. Ruth's weathered hands trembled slightly as she clutched her purse. I never thought I'd see this day, baby. Your daddy would be so proud. Cairo reached over and covered her hands with his own. We're not done yet, Grandma. This is just the beginning. Elena approached from the courtroom, her expression a mix of satisfaction and concern. The federal team wants to interview you both separately. They're moving fast on this. Good, Cairo said simply. The faster they move, the less time these people have to hide evidence. A tall federal investigator with graying temples emerged from a side office and walked directly toward them. Special Agent Rebecca Torres carried a thick folder under her arm, her face grave. Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance, she said, extending her badge. I'm Agent Torres with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. We need to discuss some findings from our preliminary records review. Ruth straightened in her seat, her voice steady despite her age. What did you find? Agent Torres sat across from them, opening the folder carefully. We've been reviewing archived seizure records from 12 years ago, the case involving Marcus Vance's repair shop. Cairo felt his grandmother's hand tighten around his. The name hung in the air like a weight. Your father's business was targeted in what was called a stolen vehicle investigation, Torres continued. 12 cars were seized from his lot under suspicion of title fraud. The seizure order was signed by then-Officer Nolan Briggs. Ruth's voice came out as a whisper. They said Marcus was selling stolen cars. They said he was a criminal. The cars were legitimate, Torres said firmly. Every single vehicle had clean titles and proper documentation, but the seizure stood because your father couldn't afford the legal fees to challenge it. The vehicles were sold at a police auction 3 months later. Elena leaned forward, her lawyer instincts sharpening. Who bought them? Torres flipped through several pages, her expression growing darker. A shell company called Premier Acquisitions, LLC. The registered owner was listed as V. Harlan. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Cairo felt the blood drain from his face, but his voice remained controlled. Victor Harlan bought my father's seized cars? That's not all, Torres said, her tone becoming more urgent. The repair shop property your father was leasing had a purchase option clause. He was 3 months away from owning it outright when the seizure happened. Without the cars to repair, he couldn't make the payments. Ruth's breathing became shallow. They foreclosed. We lost everything. The property was sold to Premier Holdings LLC 6 months later. Torres continued. Same owner. Victor Harlan demolished your father's repair shop and built the flagship Harlan Premier Motors dealership on that exact location. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Cairo stared at the federal agent, processing the magnitude of what she'd revealed. His father hadn't just been falsely accused. He'd been systematically destroyed to build someone else's empire. Ruth made a small sound, halfway between a sob and a gasp. Cairo caught her as she swayed, his arm supporting her frail shoulders. "My son," she whispered. "They killed my son's dreams and built their fortune on his grave." Elena's voice cut through the moment with sharp precision. "Agent Torres, what's the statute of limitations on federal conspiracy charges?" "There isn't one for ongoing criminal enterprises," Torres replied, "and based on what happened to Mr. Vance this week, this conspiracy is very much ongoing." Cairo helped his grandmother sit back up, his eyes never leaving the agent's face. The discipline that had carried him through the arrest, the humiliation, and the legal battle held firm, but something deeper burned behind his calm exterior. "My father died thinking he failed," Cairo said quietly. "He died believing people saw him as a criminal. He was an innocent man destroyed by corrupt officers and their business partners," Torres said. "We have the evidence to prove it now." Ruth wiped her eyes with a tissue, her voice growing stronger. "What happens to Harlan now?" "That depends on how far Mr. Vance wants to pursue this," Torres said, looking directly at Cairo. Elena stood up, her posture radiating determination. "Agent Torres, we're going to need copies of every document you've found, every seizure record, every auction receipt, every property transfer." Cairo rose slowly, helping Ruth to her feet. His voice carried the weight of 12 years of buried pain and the strength of a young man who'd built an empire from nothing. "Ms. Cross," he said, turning to his attorney with absolute certainty, "pursue everything. The arrest, the racket, and my father's stolen legacy. All of it." The courthouse television flickered with breaking news footage as federal vehicles surrounded Harlan Premier Motors, like wolves circling wounded prey. Cairo stood beside Ruth's wheelchair, watching the live broadcast with Elena and Marla flanking them in the small waiting room. "This is Channel 7 News with breaking coverage," the reporter announced over the helicopter noise. "Federal agents are conducting simultaneous raids at Harlan Premier Motors and the police impound facility in connection with what sources are calling a massive vehicle theft and laundering operation." Ruth gripped Cairo's hand as agents in tactical gear streamed through the gleaming showroom doors. The same dealership where Victor Harlan had smiled for charity photos and community awards now crawled with federal investigators carrying evidence boxes. "Look at them scramble," Marla said, her voice carrying decades of satisfaction. She pointed at the screen as dealership employees ran toward back exits, only to find more agents waiting. On television, Agent Torres directed officers toward the computer systems while others began photographing luxury cars throughout the showroom. A Maserati, a Ferrari, and 3 Mercedes were being tagged as evidence. The reporter's voice crackled through the speakers. Sources confirm that this investigation centers around false vehicle alerts, illegal title transfers, and the wrongful arrest of 18-year-old tech entrepreneur Cairo Vance earlier this week. Elena pulled out her phone as it buzzed with an incoming call. "It's the courthouse. Merrick and Briggs are being arrested right now." Through the waiting room window, they could see the main courthouse hallway, where Officer Wade Merrick stood against the wall, federal agents snapping handcuffs around his wrists. His arrogant smirk had vanished, replaced by the pale shock of a man realizing his world was ending. "Wade Merrick, you're under arrest for falsifying police reports, civil rights violations, and conspiracy to commit fraud," an agent announced loudly enough for reporters to hear. Merrick tried to speak, but the words died in his throat as cameras captured his humiliation. The same man who had twisted Cairo's arms behind his back now felt the cold metal against his own wrists. Sergeant Nolan Briggs appeared on the opposite side of the hallway, frantically tapping his phone screen, but federal agents moved faster, surrounding him before he could delete the incriminating files. "Sir, step away from the device," an agent commanded. Briggs looked up with desperate eyes. "I need to call my lawyer. This is harassment. That kid is lying about everything." "Nolan Briggs, you're under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations under color of law." The agent snatched the phone from Briggs's hands as backup officers moved in. Ruth watched Briggs being led away in handcuffs, her weathered face showing years of vindication finally arriving. That's the man who signed the papers that destroyed my son. The television switched back to Harlan Premier Motors, where Victor Harlan himself emerged from the building with agents on either side. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his posture, as photographers captured every step of his perp walk. Victor Harlan, owner of the luxury dealership empire, is being taken into federal custody, the reporter continued. The same man who appeared on television yesterday calling young entrepreneur Cairo Vance a fraud is now facing charges related to a years-long criminal conspiracy. Elena's phone rang again. She answered quickly, then turned to the group with a smile. Walter's been released. All charges dropped. He's already talking to reporters about what he witnessed. On screen, the news anchor shuffled papers as new information came through her earpiece. We're now receiving confirmation that the young man at the center of this story, Cairo Vance, is the founder and CEO of Vance Lock Security Systems, a vehicle authentication technology company valued at over $15 million. Mr. Vance, who was publicly arrested and humiliated earlier this week, has been identified as one of the youngest self-made black millionaires in the state. Ruth squeezed Cairo's hand tighter, tears streaming down her cheeks. Your father would be so proud, baby. So proud. The same news station that had painted Cairo as a suspected car thief now scrambled to correct their narrative, calling him an inventor, entrepreneur, and the brilliant young founder who had exposed a criminal network that operated for over a decade. 1 month later, the bright green Lamborghini pulled into the same gas station where everything had started. But this time, Ruth Vance sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded peacefully in her lap, as she watched the familiar scene unfold around them. The parking lot buzzed with quiet activity. A few customers pumped gas while stealing glances at the distinctive car. But the whispers were different now. Instead of suspicious muttering about theft and fake documents, people pointed with genuine admiration and spoke in hushed tones about the young man who had taken down corrupt cops and exposed a criminal network. Cairo stepped out of the car wearing the same denim jacket he'd worn that terrible day, but now it felt like armor instead of a target. He walked around to help Ruth from the passenger side, moving with the calm confidence of someone who had proven his worth to the world. Same pump, Ruth observed, nodding toward the spot where Officer Merrick had first approached her grandson with accusations and handcuffs. Same car, same station, different story, Cairo replied, sliding his credit card into the reader. The past month had transformed everything. His company, Vance Lock Security Systems, now held a 3-year state contract to install fraud prevention technology across every DMV office and police impound facility in the region. The irony was perfect. The same system that had tried to destroy him now paid him millions to prevent it from happening to others. But Cairo had been selective about his partnerships. When his original investors came crawling back with apologies and bigger offers, he turned them away without hesitation. Instead, he rebuilt his board of directors with people who had stood by him. Elena Cross as legal counsel, Marla Bennett as fraud prevention advisor, and 3 community advocates who understood what it meant to fight an unfair system. The court settlement had been substantial. Beyond clearing his name, the judge awarded compensation tied to the fraudulent seizure of his father's property decades earlier. That money, combined with his own resources, had funded something his father would have loved, the Vance Justice Garage. The new facility occupied the exact spot where Marcus Vance's original repair shop had stood before corrupt officers stole it through false seizures. But instead of just fixing cars, the Vance Justice Garage served as a training center where young people learned automotive repair, computer programming, and legal advocacy for drivers facing wrongful accusations. Every morning, teenagers arrived to learn how to code anti-fraud software and understand their rights during police encounters. Every afternoon, falsely accused drivers received free legal consultations from Elena's expanding team of civil rights attorneys. The garage had become a symbol of justice, rebuilt from the ashes of injustice. As Cairo filled his tank, Walter Ames emerged from the gas station convenience store. The elderly employee who had risked everything to preserve the arrest footage now worked as a security consultant, helping other businesses protect evidence from tampering. "Mr. Vance," Walter called out with genuine warmth. "Good to see you back here under better circumstances." "Much better," Cairo agreed, shaking Walter's hand firmly. "How's the new job treating you?" "Can't complain. Installing cameras that actually work this time." Walter glanced at the Lamborghini with appreciation. "That car's become famous around here. People drive by just to see where it all happened." A small crowd had indeed gathered at the edge of the parking lot, but instead of the hostile stares and mocking laughter from before, faces showed respect and curiosity. Parents pointed out the car to their children while explaining how the young man driving it had stood up to bullies with badges and won. Ruth rolled down her window to feel the warm afternoon air. "Your father always said this corner would see justice someday. He just didn't know it would come through his son." Near the air pump, a young boy broke away from his mother's side and approached the Lamborghini with wide eyes. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old, wearing a faded superhero t-shirt and clutching a small toy car in his hands. The boy stared at the bright green paint, the sleek lines, and the impressive wheels before looking up at Cairo with pure wonder. "Mister," the boy said quietly, "is this car really yours?" Cairo smiled and knelt down to the child's eye level, his voice gentle but confident. "It is, and one day, something even better can be yours." If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.